going to say this as an instructor and a contemporary. I don't think that the problem is that people are stupid or malicious. I think the problem is a lot of us have just never been trained. This is how you're supposed to do it, which is why I applaud all of you for being here today. All right? So in your books on page 7, I want to introduce you to a form which is referred to as APOD, APOD. We talked about this earlier today, Annual Property Operating Data. So I have some very strong points I want you to write down about the APOD. Here's point number 1. This is 1 year of operations of the property, 12 months. Typically what it's going to be is January 1 to December 31, typically. However, when you're working with investors, some investors, especially if they hold the property in an entity, will choose to do the reporting on a fiscal year, like June 30th to July 1. It's rare, but it happens. But for our purposes and for what you guys are doing, January to December, just plan on that. But it's 12 months of operations, okay? That's point number 1. Here's point number 2. All information in the APOD is annualized. This is not monthly information. This is annual information. It's the annual property operating data. So if you look at the upper section of it, that has to do with the rents. And you read the rents from left to right. So here you have 2 units, you have number of units, rent per month, monthly income, and annual income on the right-hand side. What you care about is that box on the right-hand side, the annual income. So if somebody's saying, well, I have a 4-unit and I'm getting $1,000 a door, that's $4,000 a month, $48,000 a year. If someone says to you, on our warehouse space, we're getting 50 cents a foot for shell, that's $6 a foot per year. So on these rents, you have to remember they have to be annualized based on the demisable rented suite, if it's a multi-suite type of a building. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a house or a shopping center or a mini storage or a medical building, it all works the same way. Okay? So in that upper section, you must complete the rent. Then you get to a line that says potential gross income. See where it says that? Some people call that gross scheduled income. And that is defined this way. It is the rent as if the property were 100% occupied. So you sum up in your upper section all your annual rents, and the sum value gets ported down to potential gross income. From that, you subtract vacancy. Now, I've had this vacancy talk 1,000 times, 1,000 different ways. Let me try to find the sweet spot here just to make a couple important points. So here's point number 1. Have you ever looked at a flyer or an MLS listing or whatever, and the selling side puts in there, the vacancy is 5%? You ever seen that? Okay, everybody has. So where does that come from?
Out of the air.
Out of the air? Yeah. It's good quantifiable data. Okay, so there's a term in science, I don't know if you ever heard of it, it's called SWAG, S-W-A-G, you might want to write it down, S-W-A-G. Stands for sweeping wild ass guess. If I'm looking at one of these things and I see 5% or 7% on vacancy, a little flag goes up the color red and it says to me, this person who put this together probably doesn't know exactly what they're doing. Okay? Let's do another example of vacancy. So I'm just going to pick on you guys because you're right here. So Anne, you're a seller. Pippa, you are her listing agent. Okay, Anne has come into the ownership of a 10-unit apartment building, which is a terrific building. And it's 50% full. Because Anne is a lovely human, but she hates other humans. And she wants to sell this property. So she calls Pippa. Pippa says, sure, I'll sell your property. So Pippa, how would you represent vacancy on this property before you answer, knowing that your job can be defined this way? to get your client the most amount of money in the least amount of time, right? That's what you're supposed to do. So how would you handle the vacancy?
Check absorption.
I wouldn't put anything in with this vacancy.
So you would just lie.
No, I wouldn't lie. I wouldn't lie, I just would omit.
It's not a lie, it's an omission. They're different.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, how do you handle it? You
I'll tell you in a
explain
minute, I'm
the
asking you first.
situations around it.
Yeah, Jerry, what would you do?
That sounds pro forma. You put together pro forma what it would look like if it was mostly full.
So you would lie too.
No, I would tell them it's a pro forma, it's not accurate to last year's income.
Right. Okay. Do you guys want to throw down on this one? What would you guys do?
Competitive data, find out what like places are doing and make the assumption. You make assumptions and you say, here's my assumptions, here's how I came to them. Feel free to validate it yourself, Mr. Investor, you're a smart person.
Use
Okay.
absorption as an option, as a metric.
Okay. So I like what I'm hearing. I'm going to summarize it this way. In special situations, I mean half empty, that's a special situation, right? You might not just do one APOD, you might do two, okay? And here's how you would title them. One would be called Seller's Actual, and the other would be called Broker's Forecast. Now we know, but I'm just gonna say, because I'm sitting up here, the Broker's Forecast is the one that's gonna rip your license off the wall. So if you're gonna forecast, I'm gonna go with what you guys said, you wanna be able to back it up. You might say, you know, attached to my APOD is a letter from Jerry's Property Management Company, and Jerry's Property Management Company letter says something like this on letterhead: stabilized occupancy for properties of this type is 93%. And so in my broker's forecast, I put 7% vacancy in a description, see attached letter from Jerry's Property Management. Something like that. But just say, you know what, if you put 0 in for vacancy, this thing's sweet. Don't want to do that. Now, for those of you new to the investment side, if you're working in residential units 4 or less, remember this: the lender will automatically impute a 25% vacancy, regardless of the actual vacancy, for loan underwriting purposes. Okay? A lot of people that haven't done this before are like, what, really? Yep. Because that decreases the lender's exposure based on the loan to value and the income approach.